Since its release in 2014, Five Nights at Freddy's has become very popular and as a result received over thousands of fan games. Even though most of them aren't too special, every now and then a diamond in the rough appears. One game that has always stuck out to me, even though it never received an official release, is FNAF Plus. FNAF Plus is a part of the Fazbear fanverse, a group of fan games set together by Scott Cawthon with games such as Pop Goes Evergreen and The Joy of Creation. FNAF Plus was going to be a full remake of the first FNAF game with redesigns, new features, and even some harder difficulties than before. The hype building up to the game was surreal, and I can easily see why. Something about this game has always stuck out to me and always worked so well, both as a FNAF game and a horror game. So in this video I wanted to go over what made it so special and why it was so effective. Without any further ado, let's get into it. One thing that works so well with Plus is its dark atmosphere. While the original is very well crafted and one of the darkest in the series, Plus brings it up a notch by far. This definitely shines the brightest with the animatronic redesigns. While the original's animatronics definitely left a staple, these are simply put far scarier than the predecessors. Let's look at them one by one, starting off with Chica. One thing that sticks out with her design is her broken eye. It makes her look more lifeless in comparison to the rest of the animatronics in Plus's roster, and more comparable to a hollow husk of metal. Another render shows her with an unhinged looking jaw that almost parallels with her Chica, which adds even more to this disrepaired look that FNAF is going for. One thing the creator listed as an inspiration for these darker designs were old broken animatronics from Billy Bob's Wonderland, a pizza place located in West Virginia. The animatronics from this location are immensely creepy and, as I mentioned with Chica, lifeless in their looks. That's what I really like about Chica's design. While proving scary and off-putting for a horror game such as Plus, it also is a very familiar to real-life example of animatronics that looked this way put up for kids' entertainment. It gets the best of both worlds to seem realistic while also seeming irregular or scary. One thing I want to touch up on is Chica's clothes. The chef theme for the cupcakes works very well with Chica's previously established food theme throughout the games, and adds a whole new layer to Chica's character. The pink shorts along with the pink hair tie are a really nice touch as well, adding more color variety to the overall design. Now let's move on to Bonnie. Like Chica, Bonnie's design has quite a few variations from his predecessor. Instead of that mix between dark blue and purple that Bonnie sports, he now has a more teal color. He has a bright red bow tie and shiny dark overalls. One big change is the switch from his classic guitar to a banjo instead. These design choices are very complementary with their color schemes and themes. The new Bonnie fur really pops in a nice way and is very appealing. Along with that, he has a fair share of scare factor. I'd even argue that he is the scariest animatronic in this game by quite a bit. It mainly has to do with his face. He has a chilling grin that is absolutely terrifying. His rose-up cheekbones along with how far his jaw extends to the back of his head add a lot to this design. It leaves more room for shadows and darkness to his face. It has this perfect lighting that really resonates with me, but by far the scariest part of Bonnie's design has to be his eyes. His stare is very ominous and the shadows in his eye sockets put more focus on them. They look even scarier in some of his camera renders. If we look at some of the screenshots from Plus development, we see Bonnie up close to the camera in the dining hall, staring it dead in its lens. The shadows and darker colors in the room add more emphasis and focus to Bonnie and his eyes. It adds a very creepy element to the photo and works very well. Another screenshot we have shows Bonnie right outside the left of our office. Just like the previous photos, Bonnie works perfectly with dim lighting and is very creepy in this environment. In my opinion, Bonnie has the strongest design in terms of horror for Plus. The way he was designed works so well for this type of game. Next on our list of animatronics is Foxy. For this design, it takes Foxy's out of order label and absolutely runs with it. Foxy in this iteration compared to his original counterpart has more tears across his arms, pants, ears, and has a large tear across his chest. Even his jaw has tears around it, along with much sharper teeth. I love the idea of making him more torn apart and broken to coincide with him being unable for service. The original wasn't torn up nearly as much as this version, and I must say I love this design choice. The endoskeleton also stands out with a more shiny gloss and more fortified legs. One new addition is his pure white eye. It fits the character especially well and gives massive benefits in the horror department. We fortunately have a photo of what he would have looked like in Pirates Cove from the player's cameras. It carries over all the essential aspects of the original Foxy and adds even more to it. The new tattered look for him with his razor-sharp teeth and messed up jaw elevate it further than the original, and the white eye makes it feel more ghostly in a sense. His hook pulls back the starry purple curtain in a way that parallels that of FNAF 2's teaser image back in 2014. As I mentioned earlier with Bonnie, this design works perfectly with the way the shadows cast to the model. In FNAF fan games, lighting is a very important aspect of the visual prowess, which is probably why I brought it up so much. And the FNAF Plus animatronics looks are amplified in these dark, gritty environments. Foxy and Bonnie are the best examples of this given my previous descriptions of them. Foxy is a solid design and is one of the better Plus animatronics. The last animatronic we have to talk about is none other than Freddy Fazbear himself. He is by far the most important animatronic on this list, as he's the mascot of the game. How does he stack up with the rest of our list? Well, let's look at what's changed. For starters, he's been given shiny black pants along with a snazzy new vest with a red outline on the borders of it. He still has this iconic hat and bow tie with the new addition of 2 buttons on his chest and a red stripe on his hat. He has some other changes with his appearance as well, with more rounded body parts, a more squared up face, and a darker brown fur color. Overall, I think these enhancements are wonderful for his design. The great thing about his clothes and design changes is that it still feels like that iconic character from 2014, while still giving him an identity of his own for Plus. It doesn't take anything away from the essence of what made Freddy Fazbear. You still get that feel for the original version, but it adds something new and refreshing that wasn't present in the original. And this new twist on the beloved character still, like the others, works well with the horror side of things. While we don't have many renders of him in gameplay scenarios, we have lots of images of him from the Plus VHS videos as well as the Breaker Room camera render. In both of these examples, we see him cloaked in shadow. That's the main selling point for the horror side of Freddy in FNAF Plus. Seeing just the silhouette with minimal lighting and white eyes, it fits what we've associated Freddy with in FNAF perfectly. If we bring it all the way back to FNAF 1's gameplay, Freddy on almost every camera render was masked by the darkness of the pizzeria, only being distinguishable through his glowing white pupils. This works with my previous statement as well. He keeps his iconic feel with many similarities, while also giving you something new to have and appreciate. I absolutely love Plus Freddy, and he is definitely my favorite animatronic of the bunch. He has a smart design choice and looks friendly, but can choose to be scary when necessary. On that note, I've covered all of the FNAF Plus animatronics that we have to offer. They all have great concepts, cool texture and model work, and fulfill the game's horror obligations. Now that I've covered all the animatronics in hopefully keen detail, we can move on to the next, and probably largest, aspect of the game, the Pizzeria. Since we have a lot to go over in this section, let's start off small by going over our office. Starting off, this office has way more stuff in it than the original. We have a larger desk and a closer perspective, so naturally Fiznom would have to add more items to fill said space. Quite a bit of that space is used for machinery like speakers, radios, and monitors. We also have all the original things from the desk like the fan, paper balls, and a soda can. The back wall is filled with the Celebrate poster from before, along with children's art, wires, and the puppet's mask, oddly enough. One new addition is the windows next to the desk have been replaced with speakers on the left side and 3 shelves on the right side. The shelves house party supplies and a small chibi-like Balloon Boy figure. The line above our desk is more yellow tinted than before and doesn't light up the room too much. I'm sorry for saying this so much in this video, but this office looks far darker and grimmer than ever before, which is how it should be. If we put it into perspective, Fazbear Entertainment has always been known for being a relatively cheap company, so this dirtier and darker look works for that as well. My favorite part of this office has to be the doors. When we turn our camera to the side, there's the door like usual, but now we have a large square window we can see out of with an intercom microphone and a speaker, seemingly used for checking in customers. I can't express how much I love this addition. This adds way more room to the space and makes it less cramped, while adding another practical use in the story for the security office. As expected, this also makes more room for more decoration. On the left we have a rules list, a frog clock, our lever for the door, and the light switch. The lever instead of the button for the door is a great change as well, seeing as it makes more sense. Plus the switch looks very well modeled. On the outside of the left side, we can see a door of some sort, which has renders of it both opened and closed, along with some white and gray clouds. We also can see some black carpet with multicolored stars on it if we look through the door. It's a nice change of pace seeing the left hall look unique instead of just scattered papers and random items. It makes the location feel more real in the sense that every part of it is unique from the other. In this case, it's the hall with the colorful mats and wall art and decor. Unfortunately, there's no render outside for the right hall. We do, however, have the interior for that side of the office. This side shows the window barred up and barricaded with a partially ripped fence. We have no reason as to why this level of protection is necessary, but it's a nice little spooky detail. We have that same lever from before for closing the door, as well as some kids' drawings and days since last incident counter. While it's not much to go on, it's still a pretty nifty design, and I especially like the barred window detail. The texture work is great as usual, and the animations for the doors are stellar. You can see the screen react beautifully to the door being rushed closed. The office adds a lot to the original, and makes great improvements. This would have been a great place to stay in for the game as a whole. Now that we have almost everything out of the way, it's time for the rest of the pizzeria. I'm not going to go over every room individually, seeing as that would take excruciatingly long, but I'll go over general stuff with the rooms, themes, and more. This location reflects that gritty and rundown feeling that Freddy Fazbear's is supposed to have. You see cobwebs hanging on lights and wires hanging from the ceilings are seen almost everywhere you can look. The textures used show dirty and scuffed up walls and items scattered throughout the pizzeria. An example of this are the stained walls in the storage closet. This in turn sets the atmosphere much darker. To complement this, the lighting we see shows most rooms dimly lit with little to no light sources in sight, some seeming to be only lit by the blue night sky. The set pieces in these cameras are strong as well, with the models reminding me of Scott Cawthon's quite often. One of my more favorite examples of this has to be the storage closet. There's a treasure trove of cool models in here, especially in the Lost and Found, with the Frederick's clocks and the kid's lunchbox. We also have some cleaning supplies like sprays, a vacuum that is totally not a reference to something, and a Freddy's pizza box. Something like this shows the passion and charm put into this game as well. Every poster, plush, toy, and environment piece just gleams with passion. It fits the pizzeria excellently and gives you more of small details to complement its environment for you to appreciate. It really shows how much Fiznom put his heart into this game. You could tell that he was proud of what he made and he was excited to show the community his ideal Fazbear's Pizza place. The new additions especially show this, with his creative liberties making the game look more stylish than ever. Speaking of new additions, one of the new rooms that was added to this game, and a good example of my sentiment, was the addition of the breaker room. We can see a Helpy poster, again showing more charm, advising caution around the equipment due to high voltage. There's a breaker box, along with pipes, wires everywhere, and a giant generator. While this is a very creepy room, it also happens to have the most light in it, being the only room to have a proper light source. Of course, this room couldn't be wasted with no scary factor to it. We have one other render of this room, but Freddy is standing right in front of the camera. It looks almost identical to the render of Freddy on Cam 4B in the first game. The lighting takes a drastic turn in this picture, with it complementing Freddy's silhouette. This might be one of, if not my favorite room in the game just because of how much sense it makes for the layout, but also for the scare factor and concept. If you were to give me a whole video to talk about just the map alone, it would probably take quite a while to cover everything I like about the environment, and that's exactly as it should be. If a game's environment leaves me with a lot to complement and dive into, that means it's not only effective as a regular game, but especially as a horror game. Every horror game leaves you with some sort of imprint about its location and atmosphere. Whether that's a negative response out of fear, or a positive one out of appreciation varies from case to case. With Plus, I feel like both cases work equally as well. I reckon it was going to be much scarier in the context of gameplay, but it looks very good despite not having that piece of the puzzle. At this point, the visuals speak for themselves. They're the perfect culmination of everything that goes into a great horror game, both appealing and scary. The location adds really strong components to what the original had to work with, almost amplifying it in a way. I really appreciate this location and setting, and I think it's one of the best in terms of fan games, and could even compete with some of the mainline games that Scott has put out throughout the years. After revisiting every piece of FNAF Plus content for this video, it only makes more sense on why this project was so anticipated. It had the scares, the charm, the remix cast, and so much more. After mainline FNAF losing its scare, this is what we desperately needed, and it felt like a return to form. No wonder why there were so many FNAF 1 remakes emerging after Plus's announcement. The amount of work and genuine passion Fiznom put into this game is astounding, and I'm glad we got to see what this game had to offer, despite it never releasing. There are still a few things I didn't cover, like the analog horror tapes and trailers, but I don't want this video to be too long. Thank you all for watching this video. I enjoy getting to talk about my passions in detail with people, and I'm super grateful if you got this far. Until my next video, cheers!